I gotta wait a few seconds so I can curse. Hasta me duele la pinche vulva de... Hasta me duele la pinche vulva nada más de acordarme de cuántos premios ha ganado Emilia Perez. Adios, bye. Welcome back to the Miscellaneous channel where we do miscellaneous things. I'm Selena. I typically cover TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things on this channel. So subscribe if that's your vibe. So today is a pop culture kind of day. Also, we're kind of coming up on award season, and there's a lot of buzz around the movies of 2024. And I debated a lot making this video because the discourse on this movie in particular has been very exhausting and just a huge mess that I was like, do I even want to be in this conversation? But then I watched the movie and I was just like, I can't not talk about this movie. It is so unhinged. We're talking about Emilia Perez, as you can tell, and I'm going to be talking a lot about different things, perhaps being pretty critical of the movie. And I just want to remind us all that this movie is so ridiculously unserious that, like, we don't need to take it so seriously in the comments or anything. Award shows, on the other hand, they're taking it serious, but we can't control those. At first, I just wanted to watch the movie because I had seen so much discourse around Selena Gomez and her casting and how controversial that was, and it felt like this continuation of this conversation that we had not too long ago surrounding Jenna Ortega and the infamous "You Are Latina Enough" interview, Mi Gente Latino, etc., etc. I was watching just for that, just to see Selena Gomez's performance, to judge it for myself, and discuss kind of like the controversy around it and my thoughts on that. But then I watched the movie and literally, like, Selena Gomez in the movie is not even top 10 goofiest things about it. So I was very confused and I didn't know what even... There was just so much more to say about the movie than I ever expected. So let's talk about Emilia Perez. As of recording this, the Oscar nominations are not out. So we don't know if they're nominated for Oscars, but it was the second most nominated movie at the Golden Globes, like, in history. And it won a few Golden Globes. It won Best Comedy or Musical above Wicked, above The Substance, above a lot of movies that I found way more well executed. But there's also fans of Emilia Perez, and there's just a lot of conversation. So if you don't know and haven't seen the movie, I think I recommend watching it because it's just so... Well, I don't know. Some people think it was a waste of their time, and I see that as well. But it was just a movie where I did not know what was going to happen next, like, at any point. And even though it was bad in the end, and I feel like more critical of it than positive, I still think it was entertaining because I was just like, what the fuck? Every 2 seconds in the movie. The movie is fully in Spanish, and I'm fluent in Spanish, so was able to kind of consume it in its native language. I assume a lot of these award shows in English-speaking and European countries are watching it with subtitles. It is on Netflix, so you can go watch it right now if you have that service, and I know a lot of you do because if you're watching Love is Blind, you can watch Emilia Perez too, for better or for worse. And I want to read the exact synopsis. Emilia Perez is about a feared cartel leader who enlists a lawyer to help her disappear and achieve her dream of transitioning into a woman. This cartel leader has been living as a man that was her gender assigned at birth. She decides to transition, and yeah, she enlists Zoe Saldana's character, who is a lawyer that she admires from afar, to help her with this very secret operation because it involves faking her death as the cartel leader and rejoining society under like a different name. That's the Emilia Perez, fully as a woman. Emilia Perez is written and directed by Jacques Audiard, a cisgendered French man. Remember that, it becomes important really soon. So why are people mad at Emilia Perez? This movie has pissed off entire groups of people, and then also now the fans of Emilia Perez are also pissed off at the pissed off original groups of people. So everyone's pissed off in some form or another. And I don't think it's because the movie exists. Like, weird art can exist, and it's fine. It's easy enough to avoid art that you don't resonate with. But I think what has rubbed people the wrong way is that it is getting awarded a lot at a lot of the prestigious award shows. At Cannes, their all-female cast, they won the Best Actress Award at Cannes, like as a group, as an ensemble, which was like a new historic thing. It's still very much in the awards conversation. It's heavily campaigning for the Oscars. Like I said, it won Golden Globes. There's like a huge disconnect between audiences and the conversation and the award show people and the voting. The people that are pissed off are the people that it's representing. So basically like Latin Americans, Mexicans specifically, and some of the trans community as well, and LGBT community. So yeah, the casting of Selena Gomez specifically was kind of the first controversy of this movie that I saw, and it was a lot within the Latino community, fueling this ongoing conflict between born and raised Latin Americans and Americans of Latin American descent living in the US. There's been a lot of like discourse about the Latino label, Latinidad, this identity thing that the two different groups can't agree on. So basically, according to the people that it's trying to represent, the representations in Emilia Perez are totally off, and many of these people believe that it is not portraying them accurately or sensitively for that matter, and yet it's getting all these awards and getting applauded for representing trans people, for representing Mexico. So that totally makes sense why people hate on it. I think it's okay to hate. I don't know. I think people now are starting to turn and be mad about the hate train, that the hate train was too much. I feel like the movie is doing a lot of damage control. I don't know. After the Blake Lively It Ends With Us whole PR revelations, I feel like I don't trust. I mean, and I shouldn't have been trusting them before then either, but I feel like it really put it at the forefront that right now I'm seeing a lot of people mad that there was a hate train about Emilia Perez, that people were too hard on the movie. But I don't really trust that that's not just like Emilia Perez's Oscar campaign PR team planting that to social media. The hate train could have been planted too. I don't know anymore. I don't trust anything I see. I just watched the movie, and that's why I encourage you to watch the movie. Even if it's bad and a waste of your time, it's something weird to watch and entertaining, and you can make your own opinion about the movie. And if you like it, that's fine too. Like, it's art, and I'm fine with the hate train. I'm fine with people liking it, whatever. I think it's important we preserve spaces to like disagree and talk about art, because as long as we're talking about the art and hating on it or loving on it or whatever, criticizing, I'm fine with it. It's art. That's the point of it. So after I watched it, I found out it's fully a musical. I think people at this point know that more. I watched it several months ago. I think now people are more aware it's a musical, but to me, I was like, oh, it's a full-on musical. Like, I was expecting more like a Joker Folie à Deux thing where it's kind of like an organic musical or just like kind of half-hearted in the musical direction. So it's like full stop, musical, down, bursting into singing randomly, all that jazz. I did not mind it being a musical. I like musicals just fine, but the tone was truly all over the place, and I'm going to talk about that more later on why I didn't appreciate the movie. It also exploits so many stereotypes about Mexico and narcos, drug cartels. It's a really heavy and sensitive subject for Mexico, and making it a musical kind of makes it this caricature, and it's kind of like humorous and campy, but trying to be really serious and heavy, and the tone is just very, very confused. There are other very successful musicals that deal with heavy themes. Les Mis, for example. Kind of the opposite direction because it's about France, but I don't know who wrote it. Oh my god. Sorry, here's where I admit that I was really bad at English class, and I hated when we had to read Les Mis, and I still hold a grudge to that musical to this day. But I do know that Les Mis is beloved as a musical, especially the music. The drama is so heavy, like the music embodies the heaviness of the themes of the story. And I think that's where Emilia Perez falls short. Like, a musical like Rent, too, is super dramatic, super heavy themes, but the music captures the theme, and it's like about community, and it captures like different types of people within this kind of community it's representing. Yes, it's a heightened and dramatized version, same with Les Mis, but the music drives home the authenticity and the message, and the tone, and makes you feel what you need to be feeling. And Emilia Perez doesn't, for several reasons. I feel like the tone already is so confused that you don't understand that it's heavy. Like, the music was not particularly memorable, and it wasn't particularly like amazing. The message is just very muddy of Emilia Perez too. Like, I don't know what the message is. And Jacques Audiard has come out and said, I was just posing questions. I wasn't there to answer them. But as a storyteller, you should be answering the question you're posing. And that doesn't mean like a clear thing or like a after school special lesson or something, but it means like you need to have a point of view at the end of the movie. Something like good always triumphs over evil, or the real prize is the friends we made along the way. Like that kind of thing of like, what are you saying as a artist, as a storyteller? And I don't know what Emilia Perez is saying. Maybe it's like when you live as your authentic self, you can be redeemed, but like, can you? Because she committed some heinous things in her life that are unforgivable, I think, by most people's standards. And also Zoe Saldana's character, the lawyer, she's presented as this person who is trying to make a living as a lawyer. She's very smart, but because she is a good lawyer, she is hired by like evil men to like get them off the hook for crimes they did commit. And she has like a big moral conflict within her about that, of like, I know this man is guilty and he did heinous acts, but I'm defending him as a lawyer for my job. And she kind of struggles with this moral conflict, but then falls into the same moral conflict with Emilia Perez because she's helping out Emilia Perez, who was a very feared drug cartel leader, but ends up becoming like besties with her. It's like she judges her clients and whoever she's working for their crimes, but then never does anything about them. And then the movie ends and she like never does anything about them. So I'm like, what's the point of this character and her moral conflict? Like, it didn't go anywhere. Because Emilia Perez, after she transitions, she decides to have a change of heart and help families of those who have been victims of the cartels and have disappeared. So she sets up like a nonprofit to help people that have been affected by cartels and have had family members go missing. So she's providing answers and closure for families who have lost people to the cartels. And she uses all her intel from being a cartel leader to find that information for them. To fund this nonprofit, she raises money from the wealthy who are all corrupt, and Zoe Saldana's character has this big musical number that I actually thought the choreography was pretty good. I thought it was kind of fierce how it was shot and how it was choreographed specifically, and acted by Zoe Saldana. But it's this whole number of her saying like, we're taking money from these corrupt wealthy people. And it's like, yeah, you are. And what about it? Like, what where is this going? Like, she never, like, does anything with this conflict of, like, she's always benefiting from corrupt people, but she feels morally weird about it. But that's it. Like, none, that never goes anywhere that I could figure out. So I don't know. I'm just trying to say the message wasn't really there. And I feel like with Les Mis and with Rent and other beloved musicals that are heavy and dramatic, they have a clear message that is driven home by the music. Their tone is heavy, or like in Rent's case, it's more reflective of that community. So there's like humor in Rent and stuff, but like their tones match with the theme and the setting of the musicals. Just to me, if you take away anything from this video, and my final kind of thought about it, if I could sum it up, is that Emilia Perez feels like it is a very mythologized story. And it originated as an opera. That was kind of the intention. And it feels that way. I mean, it's a musical, for crying out loud, of course. So it's a mythologized version of Mexico and a mythologized version of like the trans experience as well. Like, it feels like I'm reading or watching like a Greek myth, a story, or like something like a story about the gods and what are their names? I was about to say Arceus. I'm such a nerd. Achilles. Who are the gods? Oh, Zeus. Okay, Zeus. It's like a story about Zeus or Hercules or whatever that I'm watching instead of like a real place. But it's weird to do that to a real place with real situations and to the trans experience, which is also very real. Like, the whole trans arc of Emilia feels more like surface level and more like a magical thing that happened that is just meant to show like this moral change of heart and not like really say anything about the actual trans experience or be informed by the actual trans experience. And it's a valid choice for an art piece to mythologize their setting, right? I mean, Les Mis and Rent as examples, to keep using those, do that. I don't know. I just feel like the authenticity with Jacques Audiard not being Mexican, not speaking Spanish, not casting any Mexicans aside from one, not doing any research on Mexico. He found that unnecessary. He admitted that in an interview. He has recently apologized, but the apology was very like, sorry if you were offended. I don't really know. I don't speak French, and he doesn't speak English or Spanish, as we've covered. So I don't know if that's how the apology read in French, but the translation I saw felt like, sorry if you were offended. To use another example of a mythologized setting, another movie from 2024, my favorite movie of 2024, in fact, and also by a French director-writer, The Substance. There's a lot of parallels between Emilia Perez and The Substance in that they're both written and directed by French filmmakers, Coralie Farjat for The Substance. So I don't have beef with France, that's for damn sure, because I freaking love The Substance. It's my favorite movie, and love Coralie Farjat. I'm a fan for life now. Both Emilia Perez and The Substance were filmed in France, but set in a different country than France. And they are depicting a mythologized version of the country they are setting the story in. For Emilia Perez, Mexico, and for The Substance, it's a very mythologized, heightened version of Hollywood and Los Angeles. And both movies cover very heavy themes. So why did I love one? And why did I hate the other? Coralie Farjat speaks great English. I've seen a million interviews of her, but she also made the choice in the movie to include very little dialogue, which I feel like helps make the message of the movie more universal and transcend country lines, if you will, which I have seen an interview by Audiard saying he wanted to make this Emilia Perez message and story transcend the setting and have like a universal appeal. For The Substance, I feel like the choice is aligned with making it universal because it was a very deliberate and specific version of Hollywood that was not realistic but also made sense. And I think it's also because Coralie was very personally impacted by the theme of the substance, which is how beauty standards for women when they age are very violent in nature, in plain sight. And so she uses the extreme genre of body horror and comedy and drama to depict the violence that she feels women face. In a more silent, undercover way, she's bringing all of it to the surface in the substance. I highly recommend it. I talk about it like every other day on my social media, so if you know me, you know I'm obsessed. And to give the devil's advocate side of things, no, filmmakers don't need to be personally impacted by what they're covering, but I think for the substance, that authenticity really came through and helped the movie, and it helped me suspend my disbelief throughout the movie because it is very sci-fi and extreme and not realistic in many ways. I was able to look past all that because the message was so strong, the tone, the point of view, the authenticity, the visceral just passion put into it was very clear from every second of that movie. The message transcended the setting, and also the setting made sense for the substance. If you're gonna make a movie about beauty standards and how they affect women who are aging, the perfect place to make that very heightened conflict is Hollywood, the entertainment industry, where beauty and ageism towards women is probably the most prevalent out of any other setting you could think of. For Emilia Perez, it was like, did it have to be in Mexico? I don't know. I mean, yes, it heightens the stakes, but it feels kind of a cop-out to raise the stakes. Like, oh yeah, just add drug cartels and violence to make it interesting. I just thought it was interesting to compare The Substance, which is same year, also French origin, and also a mythologized version of a real place. It's like my favorite movie and my least favorite movie that I saw last year. And I think ultimately what offends me the most as a Spanish speaker and being raised culturally Mexican, at least as much as I could in the US, I think the core of like the disrespect to me is the writing of the movie and the dialogue, and just how clunky it is. Also, the music and the lyrics were not written by someone who is a native Spanish speaker. They were translated from French, or I think they might have it been in even another language. But even the music and the lyrics had clunkiness to them that it just feels inauthentic. Like, I don't care how weird your camera techniques and your choreo and how committed your actors are, which they really were. When the dialogue is so un-Mexican, it just takes you out of it constantly. And you're like, wait, what? That's not... And the thing with people that aren't from Mexico, they're not breaking their immersion because they don't know or they haven't visited enough or lived there. That, I think, is the big disconnect between the awards and the Europeans and Americans that are awarding it versus the Latin Americans that are watching it and very confused. Like, the slang thrown in is very haphazard. I mean, the pinche vulva, which is a very viral moment, like, no one has said that ever. And she's trying to be sexy in that scene. She's trying to say her pussy hurts or whatever, thinking of him, and it's like, just like the sentences would sometimes be strange, or like just random things like the justice system, like the trial we see. Emilia Perez, her catchphrase the whole movie is bingo. The way Americans use that word or phrase, like bingo, got it. I've never once in my life heard a Mexican person say bingo in that way. It's not a Mexican phrase. I mean, maybe it's regional, but in the norte we don't say bingo. Yeah, and we're Americanized. We're closest to the border. And then, like I said, the casting is so all over the place. He only cast one Mexican actress, Adriana Paz, in a pretty minor role in the grand scheme. She's a love interest to Emilia Perez in like the second half or last third of the movie. So throughout the movie, just the accents are all over the place. All the actresses have different nationalities, and that also is kind of confusing. They did write it into the story that Zoe Saldana is of Dominican origin, and Selena Gomez is of like from the border and she lived in the US. They wrote it in, but it's definitely an afterthought. You could just cast Mexican actors. And Audiard did say he couldn't find any that could do the job. So let me go through the actors. They've been getting a lot of buzz, and a lot of it I think is good praise. I think Carla Sofia Gascon plays Emilia Perez, and she's making history with some of her award nominations as a trans actress in this leading actress role. Only thing is, even though Emilia Perez is the title of the movie, Emilia Perez is not the protagonist. We experience the story through Zoe Saldana's character's eyes the entire time, and Zoe Saldana's character is the protagonist. So there's a bit of like category flubbing here in these award things, because they are putting Zoe Saldana in the supporting actress category and Carla Sofia Gascon in the lead actress. I could see Carla Sofia Gascon and Zoe Saldana in the lead actress, but in no world was Zoe Saldana a supporting actress in this movie. She is the protagonist of the story. It's so weird. But Carla Sofia Gascon did an amazing job with what she was given, which that part was questionable, but she was really good. She is also, I think, Spanish, so she speaks like Spain Spanish. So I think it was the shortest leap to sound Mexican, and her accent was pretty flawless to me. She wasn't breaking my immersion. She was very compelling as an actress. She did amazing. So the acting, honestly, is one of the better things about this movie. Zoe Saldana, she did amazing. She won the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress. It's so hard because like the material is so all over the place that I'm like, would I award this? I don't know. But she really committed hard, and like the choreography, she was really good. That number on the tables, which I think is one of the El Mal is the name of the song, and it's one of the nominated ones, even though plot wise her character is very confusing. She did amazing, committed, she sang, she danced, she had to like commit, like I don't know, there was a lot of like heavy commitment in this movie acting wise, that she like really led the cast with that. And she had the most numbers, she had the most lines, so she had a lot on her plate for the movie, and she did really good. She had like a bit of an accent, and I'm not sure if that's like, she's a little bit Americanized. She grew up with, I think, Dominican and Puerto Rican parents, so the Spanish she speaks has a different accent than Mexican, but I still understood her perfectly. Like, she had a slight accent, but her intonation was all there and like made sense with the line she was reading. Just saying that because of where I'm about to go with the Selena Gomez stuff, I'm so sorry. Through the movie, I low-key thought Zoe Saldana ate. She ate. I'm sorry. And also she's been underappreciated for a long time in Hollywood because she has done these sci-fi superhero type movies, but she eats. And also she should have been nominated for lead actress. She is the main character. And also, by the way, Selena Gomez is on all of the posters, when her character is very minor, so much more minor than I expected when I clicked play on my Netflix. You'd think Selena Gomez is playing Emilia Perez. Okay, so let me get into the disclaimer before I talk more about Selena Gomez. Okay, to my Latin Americans, I don't speak for your experience. To my Mexican people watching this, born and raised, I can't speak for you exactly. I can only speak to my experience and my background as a Mexican American. Last time I made a video about Mexico, Love is Blind Mexico, there were a lot of assumptions going on in the comments about how Mexican I am. And I was just like, guys, you don't know me. You don't know me at all. You don't know how I was raised, and it's the same conversation we're about to have with Selena Gomez. The bullet points are that I do speak Spanish. I lived in Mexico the first few years of my life. And I visited often, like all my long breaks, summers and spring breaks. A lot of times I would spend in Mexico. And I was raised in a household with Mexican adults, with Mexican cable. And then to my Selenators, please, I understand being protective of your fave. My very own fave had a flop movie last year, so, you know, I understand your pain. And the conversation has gotten really nasty towards Selena Gomez and like really resorted to low blows, and I don't know. I don't like that and the nastiness, but the performance itself is not above criticism. Art is meant to be consumed, it's meant to be analyzed, and everything I say is just an opinion based on my own life and background, and it is what it is. I'm not gonna get nasty, I can promise you that. But I will critique the art because that's what I do here. I don't know. So Selena Gomez, let's talk about it. This is why I originally watched the movie, and then I realized she's barely in the fucking movie. All the clips you've seen online are probably the entirety of her screen time. And I am surprised. She was what went viral. I mean, I guess I'm not surprised because she's so famous. It's huge. It's like Ariana Grande being in Wicked, you know? But I'm surprised she went famous over some of the other things in the movie that were ridiculous. Like the penis to vagina song, anybody? Which has been going more viral recently, and I'm glad because that felt like a fever dream. Like, what was I that was when I was like, what am I watching? I don't know what's coming next. It's like a whole musical number about like sex change operation and very weirdly sung. I'm at a loss with that one. You gotta look it up for yourself. It's on YouTube. The Selena Gomez performance, mostly just the Spanish dialogue, was not good, and it was hard to understand. When she would switch to English, there were a few moments of that, or when she would do a musical number, the performance was good. It was better. Like, there was one musical number where she had to do a lot of, like, physicality that was, like, really interesting. That was, I think, my favorite part of the movie. I'm realizing most of my positive notes are about physicality commitments that a lot of the actors made during the musical numbers and choreography. I enjoyed the choreography. Maybe it's weird. I'm not a musical theater nerd, so I don't analyze choreography like that, but I enjoyed certain moments and certain musical numbers with her doing a lot of physicality. Her nonverbal acting and the performance of that was decent. But then when she had to speak Spanish, it all fell apart. It was giving text to speech. Like, it doesn't even sound the way I've heard Americans speak Spanish. I don't know what it is. Maybe her mouth shape just doesn't make Spanish shapes. Different languages have different placements in the mouth, and I learned about that. I took a voice class. She just always struggled. Like, when I've seen other instances of her speaking Spanish, it sounds the same. It sounds very robotic, and there was just no intonation or flow to the dialogue that made me understand what was being said or the message that she was trying to convey. Here, let me try to demonstrate. Okay. Wait. So I did my version of the pinche vulva. Okay, here's a reminder. Let me try again. I can't. This line is stupid. Okay. Hasta me duele la pinche vulva nada más de acordarme de ti. That's regular Spanish, my accent. And then her accent. Me duele la pinche vulva nada más de acordarme de ti. That's how she sounds to me. Let me try a American speaking Spanish accent. Hasta me duele la pinche vulva nada más de acordarme de ti. That's more like an American speaking, or how I've heard like an American accent spoken. It's a little different, right? Some words I couldn't even make out. There was one part that she said, I think she was trying to say me espantaste or me asustaste, which mean you spooked me, I'm scared. Like, ooh, I'm scared. And she said, me espustaste. But there were moments like this where I was just like, I don't know what word she just said. So the big counter argument, because, you know, the Selenators are intense, and also the fans of the movie, there's a lot of fans of the movie, they say, well, actually, her character grew up in the US and spoke English. She's from the border. This is like fully the fault of the director. And after watching the movie, I don't fault Selena Gomez like at all, basically. Like, I mean, she could have just not taken the role, but actors need to work. I don't know. They take jobs. And also, like, if the director is casting her, she has probably the right to assume, like, oh, my Spanish was okay for the role. It worked. The whole argument of she's American living in Mexico. And she married Emilia's character, like, when she was 20 or something, 19 even. She moved to Mexico pretty young and has lived in Mexico presumably like 10 years. And if she's married to a Mexican person, she has Mexican children, she's pretty immersed. I just think the argument falls apart totally in the writing, because if she was someone more comfortable speaking English, someone who is speaking Spanish as a second language, there are scenes where she's talking to herself. And wouldn't someone more comfortable speaking English when they are talking to themselves in a room alone speak English to themselves? Several of these characters, the main characters, Emilia Perez and Zoe Saldana's character, they were shown through the movie to speak pretty flawless English in certain scenes. So if Selena Gomez's character is speaking to them, don't you think she would break into English here and there, knowing they speak English and they understand English? They like lived in England, or one of them lived in England at one point in the movie. In reality, a character like Selena Gomez her name was Jessie. Jessie, they called her. A character like Jessie would be speaking English, throwing in English. She would be losing her words in Spanish and pause. That's where the writing was totally flawed with the character. And it made no sense with the accent, because she's over here saying full Spanish sentences at full speed with like complicated words, and yet she's supposed to not know Spanish that well as a character. It doesn't align. Like, she would literally say no sabo at a certain point. Stuff like that. If they want to convey this character is a gringa, they would have mixed in more Spanglish or made her go back and forth like really fast between English and Spanish. Or like when she's really mad, maybe she'd burst into English, because when somebody's mad, they usually revert to their main language that they're most comfortable in, that they know best. And so there was kind of like a controversy online, and this brought about the big conversation about Latino identity, Latinidad, as some people dub it here in the States. And she was beefing with Eugenio Derbez, who he started it. Eugenio Derbez is a Mexican comedian and actor. He's also done some roles in the US in English as well. I grew up watching his sketch shows and sitcom, La Familia Peluche. My family was a big fan. I credit watching a lot of comedy and some of Eugenio Derbez's shows to like just keeping my mind sharp and like opening my mind, since I wasn't in Mexico all the time. It really helped me like stay connected to the humor. But like many male comedians of his generation, most of everything he's done has aged like milk and has been very problematic. So it's like, I recognize that too. Now he's made the move to Hollywood and does a lot of English speaking roles. He criticized Selena Gomez's performance on some podcast or interview or something, and he kept the criticism to the performance. He said pretty similar things to what I've said in this video about it, just saying he just couldn't believe like she's getting all this praise for it, like she's not speaking Spanish well, it was hard to understand her. Yeah, he's a little mean or like shady, I guess, and critical, but he kept it all to the performance. He did not mention Selena Gomez being Latina versus not. He didn't go that far. He was focused on the performance. He was just very critical about it. And also, he's a comedian, and he's been way more offensive about a million other things in the past. So like, this was very tame, I thought. And the reason this clip got so much traction is because Selena Gomez responded, and she said, "I understand where you are coming from. I'm sorry, I did the best I could with the time I was given. Doesn't take away from how much work and heart I put into this movie." Okay, yeah, I get it. And she did put a lot of work and heart, like I said, the physicality and the nonverbal parts of the movie that she's in, pretty well done. Like, it's okay to criticize art, but stans will never Stans will never understand or care that people are allowed to criticize art. It doesn't mean she doesn't have talent. So he got so much backlash that he had to issue a very PR written apology, like fully just, I'm so sorry, Latinos need to stick together. I was so out of line, despicable, very written by a PR firm. Like, there was nothing special about this apology. He's trying to keep his career afloat. I think this is the easiest thing. It's not that big a deal. But I just hate that, like, public figures just can't have opinions. Like, who cares? But, I mean, people care. People are so annoying. I can't. Okay, anyway. And then Belinda got in the mix because she's like a Mexican pop star. Love her. Icon. She's like basically the Hillary Duff of Mexico. Belinda got mad at Eugenio Derbez for what he said. He said he shouldn't be, you know, attacking. What'd she say? She was disappointed that he discounted Selena Gomez's like hard work. We gotta be empathetic. It's a nice comment to make. Good on her. Nothing but respect to my Cheetah Girls 2 anti-hero, Marisol. I mostly think she's trying to secure that collab because if there's one thing Selena Gomez can do, it is motherfucking chart on Billboard. And I will defend that to the death. Like, the girl can spot a hit if it's the last thing she does. One of the most effortless charting artists I have ever seen. I'm not hating on her. I think she's great and cool and she's kind and she's an activist and all these things. Like, good for her. It's just like, we gotta be able to criticize a performance. It's okay. It'll be okay. What I don't agree with is like policing how Latina Selena Gomez is. Like, that also, I don't care in the sense of like, unfortunately it just varies greatly depending on the context of your environment. In the US, she is categorized as a Latina based on her looks and name alone. And that comes with a certain discrimination in this country that is very, very real. I believe she was raised, she is half American. I think her mother is fully American and her father's side is the Mexican side. She does not speak Spanish and she was raised in the US her whole life. The type of Latino American who is past several generations in the US. And the thing with those people is that for certain generations, like a few generations past me, like my grandparents' generation and parents' generation, Latinos in the US were discouraged from speaking Spanish. They were punished in school if they spoke Spanish. So the language was lost pretty quickly for people of Latin American descent that have been here for generations, have been in the US for generations. And it's interesting because within Latinos and Latin Americans, this is like a big, we're all like, I'm different from her, I'm different from them, I'm different. And to US Americans, all the Latinos are lumped together. It doesn't matter if you're visiting here from Mexico, if you moved here when you were a kid, if you moved here when you were an adult, if your family has been here 7 generations, if you have like Latino looking features of some sort, you will be lumped into the Latino category in the US by Americans and face whatever discrimination that comes with that. Like, Selena Gomez has been told many times and bullied on social media saying like, go back to Mexico. And it's like, she's not from there. She's from Texas. And honestly, I think other immigrant cultures will relate to this a lot. Like South Asians, East Asians, Africans. Like, there's a difference between people of the country and then people in the US that are descendants of that country. Like, there's so many people in the US that are like, I'm Italian, like Ariana Grande or Lady Gaga, my girl. But an Italian living in Italy would be like, she's an American. Or I should say, she's an American. The same conflict, I think, arises in every culture that is not like the dominant white American or European descent. I also get the perspective that people from these countries are just like, y'all are Americans. Your life is American, and therefore that's what it is. It's just the US is such a weird ass country where identity, like we don't have an identity as a country because it's kind of too new, I guess. And so people latch on to their descendant identities still. There hasn't been like enough time of American being American. And also like there's such a diversity, but also such a hierarchy of, you know, treatment here in the US and like colorism. It's complicated. I can't get too far into it on a trashy TV commentary channel, but maybe I should read a book about it. I would love to. If you have recommendations on good books on this topic, let me know. Like even in Latin America, they don't really recognize Latino or Latinidad especially as like a term because it's not a useful term in the context that they live because everyone's Latino there basically. I feel like the term like Latinoamericanos is used when we're talking about like other countries in Latin America. It's just not a helpful term when you're living in Latin America compared to here, where that is like an identity that society puts on you, whether you like it or not. And for Selena Gomez and anyone else like her, like I don't know how she was raised. There are pictures of her like looking like Primera Comunión, and she's dressed very Mexican, and there's photos like that of her, but also she doesn't know Spanish. She's not that connected to the culture from what she said. It's just like down to semantics, and that's why it's like not a productive conversation to be saying, how Latina is she? Is she Latina enough? People from Latin America are never gonna recognize her as such, as Latina enough. And people in America are gonna see her as like representing Latinos. It's just like depends on the environment you're in and the country you live in. I think the issue people really have is forcing her as Latina representation and her being awarded. Like there's always these like moments in award shows that's like the first Latina under 30 who won best supporting, I don't know, whatever it is. And the Latinos are always like, we don't view her as our representation, and so they get mad. Media outlets and press and all this stuff's telling you like, your people won this award and was represented here, when those people don't feel represented by that person or the movie in this case too. And she does represent a certain demographic here in the US of Americans of Latin American descent that don't speak Spanish. That is still a demographic that exists. And so she is representing a group of people. It's just kind of too broad to paint with the brush of all Latinos. She's representing all Latinos. And also Americans and Europeans, they don't care that we're having this conversation. They don't give a fuck who's Latino enough and who's not, and they don't even think about that. That's not on their mind. They don't know her Spanish is clunky. God forbid there's like Latino representation on these award committees and such. For me, I'm trying to focus most on the performance, and that's what I'm critical of. Like, I don't care to define how Latina Selena Gomez is. It's not my business, and it doesn't affect me. The performance in this movie, I did not find great, or I found flawed in the Spanish part of it. Mostly it's the fault of the director and writer who wrote, I mean, she did not write the pinche vulva line, you know? That's all him. And it's just bad. The decision to cast in this role is bizarre. Writing it in a way that doesn't reflect the background of the character being Americanized was a big flaw that could have sold it. Like, it's the writer's job and director's job to sell your character. He could have, with this character, represented Americanized Latin Americans, or like people that are raised in the US and then moved to Mexico. He decided to just cast someone, write a little extra origin story thing, bullet point, and then call it a day. I saw some pretty good TikToks about criticizing Emilia Perez that are way more brief than this video. As I'm recording this, I don't know if TikTok's getting banned. I'll link it if it's not, but I think it might be banned tomorrow, girl. I don't know. Quickly, I guess I want to touch on the trans representation issues in Emilia Perez. I already kind of talked about it. It's just kind of mythologizing, and I feel like using transness as like a moral thing. Like, it feels like you know, when there's a story about a god and like a fairy turns him into a human and then he dies and it's like a thing. I don't know. It feels like that kind of story of like not real or not coming from a real place. And I have less direct experience, like firsthand about the trans experience and how this movie reads, but it just felt very surface level. And I have consumed a lot of media about the trans experience that has been very good. This just felt very like surface and just using it for the plot and to spice up the plot, or just to like make like a magical transformation and not like reflect any real questions about transness or I don't know. It's weird. I feel like the issues with the trans representation are a little more like vibes than as clear cut as like the issues I had of representing Mexico. I did find some articles I'll link below of reviews by trans people. One is like really negative and then one is positive and responding to the negative one. So it's like controversial. It's polarizing because I don't think transness is depicted super offensively in the movie. I did not get that vibe that it was like, we're making fun of this character or, you know, someone sees them and throws up and stuff, which has been historically like a thing in media. Like there wasn't stuff like that where it was handled like, this is disgusting or something, or freak show, but it was just surface level and just, I think, used as like a tool. It was bizarro, and I'll link those articles if you're interested in reading more. Like the negative review does see some offensive parts of the movie and the depiction, and then the other review is saying like the reviewer is reaching kind of a little bit. And like the penis to vagina song, I swear it felt like very sensationalizing of the process just for the sake of like campy musical. And like I feel like that number in a different context, in a different musical, if it were made by a trans person, could work, but like just tonally it felt so bizarro and it just didn't feel like a nuanced take on gender affirming surgery at all. And also kind of like the martyrdom at the end. Spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1. Emilia Perez dies at the end. That kind of feels like this trope of like trans characters having tragic endings, which I mean, it's okay for media to do, but again, it's just like very surface and it feels very like a Greek mythology story. Like it feels like The Substance. Like The Substance is like a fake magical substance thing and process that's made up, and that's why it's good. Like it makes sense. But in this one, it's like transness. It's like a real thing. Using transness as like a magical narrative tool. Just like a magical process, a magical substance to like show like a moral change. It rubbed me the wrong way. Not like in a, it's offensive, it's it shows transness in like this very negative light or anything. But it just felt like kind of surface and basic and not saying anything interesting. It's just like an excuse for a transformation. And I'll just leave you with some great trans media recommendations that I've seen. Well, one I haven't seen actually, and I want to. From this past year, 2024, there's a movie called I Saw the TV Glow that is written and directed by a trans filmmaker, and it's a lot more abstract and like creepy. I really loved it, and it's kind of more like an if you know you know thing, but like it's has a lot of authenticity to the trans experience, and that felt very visceral when I watched it. And then one of the best TV dramas I've seen, it's like a limited series. It only has like 9 or 10 episodes, that kind of show, and it's called Veneno. It's based on a real life public figure in Spain named Veneno. She was like a TV personality who was of trans experience. It's kind of like a biopic type of dramatized show, but it was amazing. It's in Spanish. It's on HBO Max. I hope they haven't deleted it. They've been deleting stuff on that app. It's very intense, but it felt like one of the most authentic representations of the trans experience that I've seen, and again, written by a trans person. For a documentary about the history of trans representation in media, I recommend Disclosure. I think it was produced, or like one of the main creators of it, filmmakers, is Laverne Cox, who is a trans TV personality here. Really good general overview of how trans people have been depicted in media. Then another documentary from this past year apparently is Will and Harper, which I had heard about. I had seen the trailer, but I didn't realize it was out, and I think it's out now, and I need to go watch it. Like, that needs to be making more noise because I didn't know it came out. It's the movie that Will Ferrell made about his best friend who transitioned, her journey, and I haven't seen it yet, but it seems like a very sensitive and accurate portrayal. Those are my recommendations in lieu of Emilia Perez. Just if you are looking for more, I don't know, cool and interesting media representation of the trans experience. And I think these are all like the trans feminine experience. Those are my thoughts on Emilia Perez. This is a long video, but I've been wanting to make it, and after I saw it, I was like, oh my god, I have to make a video, and then I got really sick, and I had to delay making it. This movie was wild. It was wild. It was wild. Let me know your thoughts on Emilia Perez. Again, it's not that serious. It's just a movie. We can just close our eyes at the Oscars if anything goes down, but like, who cares? I don't even care about award shows that much. Like, I do like to watch them, but once they happen, I'm like, whatever. I just care about my faves. I feel like it's a lot of politics that go into that stuff. Same for Grammys. Like, yes, I'm gonna love when my fave wins, but also like, they're kind of all bullshit. I don't know. I'm kind of very cynical about awards. You know, keep it civil. It's not that serious. You don't have to watch it. You don't have to watch it. Don't watch it if you don't want to. I just think it's an interesting phenomenon. An interesting phenomenon indeed. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed. I put out new videos whenever I feel like it about TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things. And you can follow me at Miscellaneous to keep up with me, or just turn on the bell notification here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Adios!